Hey guys, welcome to the Chapter 12 installment of my super informal vocab video. The first term for this chapter is first line of defense. So Chapter 12 is all about the immune response that we have to invading pathogens. So the first line of defense that we have are the physical barriers that block things from getting in. So your skin, any secretions, chemical secretions that come out of the skin. Those are first line defense, the barriers, the actual physical walls of cells. The second line of defense is also known as the innate immune system. This is a non-specific response, so it just recognizes that something is invading the body, that it's not supposed to be there. But it can't tell you exactly what it is. Is it the flu virus or the measles virus? It can't distinguish. It just knows that it's a virus and it shouldn't be there. This is called our innate immune system, and it is not specific. The third line of defense, this is sort of the ultimate defense system, is also known as the adaptive immune response. And this is a very specific immune response. It recognizes specific pathogens and targets them very specifically. Lysozyme is a chemical. It's part of the first line of defense. It is a chemical that's made, it's part of tears, and it's just a chemical that lyses bacteria. Immunology is the branch of medicine that studies the immune system, so all of the white blood cells and the organs and tissues that are associated with the immune response. Markers are not the things I use to write the words on these cards. In this case, in the sense of biology, markers are things that stick off of cells that identify them. They're sort of cell identifiers. So things that markers on bacteria are things that are like pathogen-associated molecular patterns. PAMPs are markers of bacteria. They are just chemicals that identify cells as bacterial cells or as liver cells or as white blood cells. So any chemical identifier. PAMPs, pathogen-associated molecular patterns, are markers that are found on the surface of bacteria. So certain patterns of chemicals that all bacteria have, things like lipopolysaccharide endotoxin is unique to bacteria. Other things I can't think of right now. Pattern recognition receptors, PRRs, are the receptors on human cells that recognize those PAMPs. Basically, PAMPs are how we profile cells as bacteria or not. And these are the cops that are doing the profiling, recognizing whether a cell looks suspicious, like a pathogen. The thymus is an organ that sits actually just on top of the heart. It's an organ that is really important for T cell maturation. T cells are a type of white blood cell that are important in the third line of defense, the adaptive immune system. So the thymus is an immune organ. Hematopoiesis is a big, long mouthful of a word. Hematopoiesis, it literally means the formation of blood cells. All of your blood cells, red blood cells and white blood cells, both come from stem cells in the bone marrow. And these stem cells multiply and differentiate into the different types of white blood cells and also into red cells, and that process is called hematopoiesis. Leukocytes literally means white cells. These are your white blood cells, also sometimes referred to as WBCs for white blood cells. Lymphocytes are a type of white blood cell, a type of leukocyte. The most common lymphocytes are your B cells and T cells, which we will learn about extensively. They are small white blood cells, part of the adaptive immune response. Neutrophils are another type of white blood cell. They are the body's first responders. They're usually first on the scene if there's an infection, and they're the main component of pus that we'll see. They are phagocytes. They eat things, and they don't stain with dyes, which is why they're called neutrophils. They're neutral to stains. Anyway, first responders, they're phagocytes, they eat things, and they make up pus are some key things about them. They're also the most abundant white blood cell in the blood. They are the patrollers. Macrophages are another type of patroller, just slightly lower in number. Macrophages are white blood cells. They patrol your blood, but they also patrol all your tissues. They are also phagocytes. They literally mean large eaters. They're big white blood cells, and they can eat things. Both neutrophils and macrophages are phagocytes. They are cells that can eat things, namely bacteria. Cytokines. Cytokines are chemical messengers. They're sort of like hormones. Organs secrete hormones to signal other organs. Well, cytokines are chemicals that are secreted by immune cells or even by your body cells to signal immune cells. So they're chemical signals for the immune system. It's how the immune system communicates with cells through these chemicals. Sort of like neurotransmitters are chemicals that nerves use to communicate with each other. Hormones are chemicals that organs use to communicate with each other. Cytokines are chemicals that immune cells use to communicate with each other. Edema is the medical term for swelling. Diapedesis is a big word. It just means it's referring to how white blood cells, when they go from the blood into a tissue, when they're traveling through the blood, they reach the tissue that's infected, and then they have to actually like squeeze out through like capillary pores. They literally like squeeze. If you've ever seen videos of like an octopus escaping through a small hole in a ship or something, if you haven't seen those videos, go Google that right now because it's really cool. But that's kind of what white blood cells do through small holes in the blood vessels. They just kind of like squeeze and squish their way out. That's called diapedesis. So think of that. Sounds kind of like octopus. Diapedesis, what an octopus does through a hole. Chemotaxis literally means moving in response to chemicals. So that's how white blood cells know where the infection is, because an infected tissue will release cytokines, those chemical attractants, that then call out to the white blood cells, which chemotax. They move towards those chemicals. Pus. We all know what pus is. It's that gross yellow slime, yellowy green slime in an infected wound. But really what it is actually dead white blood cells, neutrophils primarily. And that greenish color is due to a chemical that they make. But it's actually made up of white blood cells. A lot of people think it's bacteria. It's actually made of bacteria, but it's not. It's actually all those dead white blood cells that showed up on the scene to kill the bacteria. Pyrogens are chemicals, but there's a type of cytokine. Pyro means fire, like a pyromaniac likes to play with fire. So pyrogens generate fire, or fever is more like it. So pyrogens are cytokines that stimulate fevers. An antipyretic is a drug that you take to turn down a fever. So like Advil, Motrin, ibuprofen, that's all the same thing, by the way, are all antipyrogenic drugs. Interferons, or IFN for short. There's a whole bunch of different types of interferons. These are another type of cytokine, a chemical that's used to communicate things by the immune system. The important interferon that I want you to know about, the one that gave this class of molecules the name interferons, are ones that are produced by cells that have been infected by a virus. So when a cell gets infected by a virus, it can produce a class of interferons that then communicate to other nearby cells and say, there's a virus here, shut down, like close the gates, don't let this virus in. And so it tells all the other cells to basically make antivirals or do things to prevent viruses from infecting them. It interferes with viral infection, hence the term interferons, made by virus-infected cells to alert other cells that there is virus around. Complement. This one I never got this in college. It took me several times before this one clicked. Complement is a family of proteins in the blood that complement the immune system. So they're it's really part of the blood, but it works in conjunction with the immune system. So that's where it gets the name complement. But it's a whole bunch of proteins, C1, C2, C3, C2b, they all have C for complement. But basically it's just a bunch of proteins that can aid and assist the immune system. So one thing complement can do is it can coat bacteria, like basically just the word is opsonize, which is the next vocab word. So when a cell is opsonized, it means it's coated with either complement proteins or antibody proteins. I like to think of opsonizing as like putting sprinkles on something, because when you put sprinkles on any food, it just makes it look that much more appetizing and delicious. That's how I used to trick my toddler into eating foods. I would just put sprinkles on it, like eggs, chicken. It didn't matter. If I put sprinkles on it, she would eat it because I opsonized it. And white blood cells really like to eat things that are opsonized with either complement or antibodies. So complement can opsonize, it can coat things and make it look extra delicious. It can also, there's some proteins of complement that can actually literally punch holes in the walls of bacteria. So we know what opsonize is. It's to candy coat, sprinkle coat bacteria with either antibodies or complement proteins and make it look really delicious for phagocytes. And then defensins, the last one, these are antimicrobial proteins that our bodies make. They are short peptides, so they're very small proteins that can actually puncture the walls of bacteria and have antimicrobial properties. The end.